punishment.
In Florida, underlings of mafia boss Howard Saint, Mickey and Bobby, arrive at the docks to carry out a deal with Otto Krieg and his Russian partners. Otto knows Mickey but is suspicious of the new face, Bobby, but Mickey reassures him he is no Fed. The deal gets underway and Otto collects his cash and delivers a cache of weapons to the two, but suddenly they are surrounded by FBI agents. Otto pulls a gun and gets riddled with bullets. Then in a moment of misunderstanding, Bobby and the Russians are killed in a hail of bullets. Otto's and Bobby's bodies are taken away, but Otto suddenly rises, revealing that he is undercover FBI agent Frank Castle, who regrets the deaths, but at least they got the job done. It's Castle's last day on the job, and the agents throw him a surprise retirement party. Before leaving, he learns that Bobby is the son of Howard Saint, but thinks it's the FBI's problem now. Meanwhile, Saint learns of his son's death. The men get Mickey out of jail and bring him back to Saint's club, where his enforcer Quentin Glass oversees Mickey, getting his ass beat for involving Bobby in his deal. Mickey begs them to leave his face when they kill him so his mother can identify him, but Quentin has no intention of killing him. Mickey explains that Otto brokered the deal and is now dead, but this is no consolation to Saint, who turns up with his eldest son John. He is determined to kill the man that caused his son's death, but instead of Mickey, he shoots Bobby's bodyguard dead. Castle returns home to his wife Maria, reassuring her he is home for good. His son isn't looking forward to moving again, but Castle reassures him this is the last time and promises to explain it all to him when he is older. Saint goes to view his son's body in the morgue where Castle's former partner, FBI agent Jimmy Weeks, refuses to give him any intel and urges him to leave the investigation to the FBI. Despite the warning, Saint starts putting up big money to get information on Otto Krieg. Castle travels with his family to Puerto Rico for a family reunion, including his father Frank Sr., mother, and extended family. Frank Sr. is happy having the entire family together, especially proud of his grandson and the family his son has created for himself. Castle excuses himself from the table and Maria follows him, thinking something is wrong, but he just wanted to spend some alone time with her. He apologizes for being away from his family for so long, but she knew what she was signing up for and would do it all over again. After the funeral for Bobby, Saint receives an extensive file on Otto, now knowing his real name as FBI agent Frank Castle, faked his death, and is at a family reunion in Puerto Rico. Saint wants Castle dead, but his wife Livia wants his entire family wiped out, and Saint agrees. The next morning on the island, Castle and Maria come to wake their son. He shows them a t-shirt he bought from a gift shop with a skull that the man there says wards off evil spirits and gifts it to his dad. Later on in the day, the entire family is gathered by the beach having a fun time. Meanwhile, a team of armed men are making their way to their location. Castle is just sitting down enjoying seeing his entire family together when his father pulls him away for a talk inside a building. They start talking about Frank Sr.'s vintage gun collection when the armed men begin opening fire on the family gathering. Maria and their son, who had walked a distance down by the shore, quickly hide under a boat. Father and son quickly arm themselves and take out one man who comes checking, getting into a shootout with another. The shooters, including John, spare no one, mercilessly gunning down those that flee or try to hide from them. Castle manages to take out the gunman, but by that time everyone has been killed. Frank Sr. gets shot in the back, and Castle gets put into a chokehold, but Frank Sr. musters the strength to take out the man before dying. Meanwhile, Maria and their son spot a jeep nearby and plan to make their escape, get spotted by the men, but manage to jump into the jeep and take off. The men jump into their cars to give chase. Castle sees them escaping and takes out his last attacker before grabbing a gun and jumping on a bike. Maria's truck has a boat attached, which allows the men to catch up to them easily and start shooting at the van, but Castle is quickly gaining on them. The men almost get taken out by the boat when they get too close, but manage to shoot out a tire, causing the van to flip. Though severely injured, both mother and son drag themselves from the wreckage and run to a building begging for help. They then see Frank Sr.'s boat at the docks and try running toward it, but the van of men quickly catches up and runs them over. Castle finally gets to the docks only to see his wife and son laying dead there. The van of men then return and Castle starts firing and ends up getting shot multiple times and falls. Quentin, Bobby, and another man step out to face a bloodied Castle, and Bobby kicks him over the head before beating on him. They then drag him to the edge of the docks, where John shoots him. Quentin then spreads gasoline all over the docks and Castle before setting it on fire. But Castle isn't dead just yet, and the explosion throws him into the water. Castle drags himself onto the shore, where he is found by a local fisherman and voodoo priest Candelaria. Mickey gets relegated to doorman for Saint's club, where he learns that Castle has been found and killed. Inside, Saint meets with some partners, so he sends Quentin to keep Livia company on the dance floor. But as he talks, he can't help but notice Quentin and Livia are uncomfortably close. Later, he gifts Livia a pair of diamond earrings, and she plans to give it up to him for avenging their son. Candelaria nurses Frank back to health, and he finally revisits the spot where his entire family was wiped out, the painful memories returning to him. He packs up his father's guns, then finds the skull shirt his son gifted to him. He thanks Candelaria, who tells him to go with God, but Castle knows God isn't going where he is headed. He returns to the city, where he brings his arsenal of weapons to a building on the outskirts of town, where he turns the place into a fortress. He also begins working on his own custom car. Also living in the building are Joan, a waitress, Bumpo, a cook, and high school dropout Spacker Dave, who have been noticing Castle working on his car for the past few days. They start speculating as to what he does for a living, but are too scared to approach him. One night, Castle kidnaps Mickey and takes him back to his building, demanding to know everything about Saint. Mickey refuses to talk, knowing Saint would kill him, but Castle plans to end him right here. He then grabs a torch, telling him the hot flames will send his body into shock and all he will feel is cold. Castle then torches a piece of steak while pressing a popsicle to Mickey's back, who begins to scream in terror. The screams wake Bumpo and Spacker, but they wisely decide to stay out of it. Mickey decides to talk. All he knows is that Saint washes dirty cash for the Toro brothers. Frank ends the ruse and lets him down. Castle plans to take Saint's entire operation down, and Mickey decides to work with him, as he has long hated the Saints. He then begins to tell Castle about Howard's routines, his love for Livia and her routines, revealing she was the one who had his entire family wiped out, and about Quentin, who after following him, Castle learns is secretly into men. Castle uses his car to break his headstone, and just as Saint gets a call about it, he finds the headstone sitting on his golf course. Castle then appears before the FBI chief and Jimmy in the middle of the street, wondering why no one has been arrested for the murder of his family. They think he is just upset, but Castle tells them that what he feels is something way more than just being upset. Castle then infiltrates one of Saint's buildings, where he launders his money, taking out 2 men along the way. He holds the money counters at gunpoint and forces them to gather up the cash and start throwing it out the window, causing a commotion in the street. 2 of Saint's men then encounter Castle, leaving with a briefcase of cash, and there is a standoff. Everybody shows their guns, but Castle is faster and takes them both out. Spacker and Bumpo find out about Castle's military and FBI background when they hear him return. They go to peek, but end up making a fool of themselves in front of Castle. Inside his apartment, Castle is drinking his sorrow away, his family's voices echoing in his mind. Saint has his top men gathered, trying to figure out how Castle is still alive and how to find him now. Quentin thinks Castle is daring them, but Saint just thinks he is depressed and wants to join his family. The Toro brothers turn up at Saint's home the next day, furious about their cash, as they lost $50 million all at once. They threaten to take their business elsewhere, but Saint promises to have their money back in no time. Quentin has called in a hitman and thinks Castle will be dead within 48 hours. Back at Castle's building, Joan's boyfriend is angrily trying to break his way into her apartment while she clutches a knife in terror. Spacker tries to intervene, threatening to call the police, and the boyfriend starts smacking him up until Castle himself appears. The man pulls a blade, but one punch puts him out of commission and sends him scurrying away. Joan apologizes for the disturbance and introduces herself and the guys. They all feel bad about what happened to his family, but Castle claims to be over it. The following night, as Livia heads inside a movie theater, Castle plants a fire hydrant beside her car, then breaks into her car, where he calls Quentin, threatening to release images of his undercover lifestyle unless he brings $5,000 to the Wyndham Hotel. Castle then illegally parks Livia's car at the hotel, causing her to get a ticket. Once he observes Quentin pull up to the hotel, he returns Livia's car to the movie theater. Saint is asking for Quentin when Mickey reveals he saw Quentin at the Wyndham a few hours ago. Saint then steps out of the room to see Quentin and Livia chatting and laughing away. Quentin lies that he dozed off by the pool, and that Mickey must have been mistaken, but Saint is suspicious. Spacker and Bumpo are at Joan's diner where Castle is also there eating a meal when a man enters carrying a guitar case and begins staring at Castle intently. The man reaches into his case and Castle readies his weapon, but the man pulls out an actual guitar and plays a song that seems to be written for Castle. Afterwards he comes over, revealing his name as Harry Heck, and the song he wrote will be sung at Castle's funeral. Later Castle is heading home when a car races up and rams him. It's Harry who opens fire on Castle's bulletproof car. Castle manages to pull off, but ends up crashing the car, which lands on its top. Harry catches up, and Castle crawls out and pulls a projectile knife, firing it into Harry's neck and killing him. Later Bobby is overseeing the movement of Saint's cash on a boat when he finds a claymore on his boat and narrowly escapes the explosion. He then sees Castle in the distance. Saint is furious about the lost cash, and to make things worse the Toro brothers have already heard the news and are getting cocky with Saint. Saint refuses to cover their losses, as this is the only shipment that has gone bad, and reminds them he has more guns than they do if they have a problem. Saint is determined to get rid of Castle and decides to call in the Russian. Castle is at home when there is a knock at his door. It turns out to be Spacker, who wants his help as Joan's ex-boyfriend has broken into her apartment. Castle gets dressed and rushes over, but it turns out the group has surprised him with dinner. Castle digs in. They all go around the table saying what they're thankful for, and Castle manages to say thanks for dinner. Spacker and Bumpo then leave to allow Castle and Joan to talk. She tries to connect with him, telling him she understands his pain, but he can now make new memories. She tries to kiss him, but Castle tells her he isn't what she is looking for. He returns to his apartment and is having a drink when there is another knock. He thinks it's the guys, but he is suddenly attacked by a large Russian man wearing a striped shirt. Castle tries fighting back, even stabbing the man, but the man grabs him and returns the favor. Castle tries fighting back, but it's like fighting against a brick wall. He crawls to the bathroom and tosses a grenade, but the man knocks it right back. The neighbors who are blasting music feel the tremor, but just think it's an earthquake. Castle survives the explosion but gets himself thrown through a wall, and his head slammed in a refrigerator. He even tries going for a hidden gun, but the Russian just smashes it, bending the barrel. Castle finally gets himself thrown into Joan's apartment, but manages to throw a pot of hot liquid into the Russian's face, before tackling him out the door and over the staircase where the Russian ends up breaking his neck. Castle collapses, so the three bring him back to his apartment. Spacker gets him a drink, and Joan stitches his stab wound. Trouble is not yet over, as Quentin, Bobby and two guys arrive outside and soon come upon the Russian dead. Spacker senses trouble from them, and they hurriedly hide Castle before the men enter to find Spacker and Bumpo sitting casually. Quentin demands Castle's whereabouts, but Spacker refuses to say anything. Joan is hiding with Castle under the floor, and sees when Quentin grabs pliers then drags a seat in front of Spacker. Spacker still refuses to talk, so Quentin grabs Spacker's eyebrow, piercing with the pliers, and slowly rips it out. Spacker, crying from the pain, still refuses to talk, so Quentin continues his brutal torture. Afterwards, Quentin thinks he must have not known, and leaves one man to look out for Castle. Saint learns that the Russian is dead and Castle is still alive, so he decides to call up all his men. They are going to hunt him down. Livia then comes to kiss him goodbye as she is heading out to the movies. Castle and Joan finally emerge from underneath the floor, and Bumpo alerts him to the man standing guard. He then detaches a large paper cutter and uses it to kill the man. He returns to a bloodied Spacker who is proud that he didn't talk. Castle wonders why he would stand up for him, but Spacker tells him he is like family now. Joan is worried about Castle, but he prepares his weapons and heads out. He takes Livia's car again, this time telling Quentin that the price for his pictures is $10,000 and gives him a location to turn up at. He then contacts Mickey, who shows Saint the ticket he supposedly found in Livia's car, and when Saint sees the date and location, he becomes suspicious and asks for the keys to Quentin's house and last month's phone bill. Quentin arrives at the location, which is a clothing store, but sees no one. Saint enters his home and begins to check around when he finds Livia's diamond earrings laying on the couch. Quentin finally returns home where Saint confronts him, accusing him of taking something from him. Quentin denies knowing what he is talking about, even when Saint grabs him around the neck. Saint slashes his arm with a blade, then stabs a confused Quentin multiple times until he falls, still wondering what he did wrong. Livia returns home where Saint confronts her for sleeping with Quentin and reveals all the evidence he has against her, but Livia denies everything. She tries to tell him that Quentin was gay, but gets smacked across the face and dragged outside while Mickey is loving every moment of it. Saint brings Livia for a drive, ignoring her pleas to believe her. They then stop on a bridge, and he drags her from the car and tosses her over onto the train line, where she is killed by a train. Back at his building, he offers his men 50 grand apiece and 50 grand to any man who kills Castle. John asks about Quentin and Livia, but learns Quentin is wrapped up in something and Livia took the train. That night, Castle readies an arsenal of weapons on the edge of the forest lining, now wearing a vest with the skull symbol. He takes out a lookout with an arrow before planting explosives on the cars outside, and drops another inside before rigging the door with explosives. Now switching to his rifle, he hears a man radio downstairs for more champagne. Castle sends up a bucket, but it is rigged with an explosive that rips the room to shreds. Castle then enters and begins dropping men. Saint recovers and Castle sees him escaping, but gets pinned down by gunfire. He then takes 2 solid blasts to his vest with a shotgun, but manages to take out a man brutally with his blades. Saint is dragging himself to the parking lot when another man triggers the bomb at the door. Castle then finds John pinned behind a desk after the explosion and puts an anti-personnel mine in his hand and forces him to hold it above his head. He then confronts Saint as he is running away. Just then John's bomb explodes and Castle tells Saint now both his sons are dead. Saint reaches for his gun, but Castle is quicker and drops him. As he lays there, Castle reveals that he had Saint kill Quentin and Livia for no reason, before tying his feet to the back of a car and planting an explosive on it. Castle then leaves the car to run through the set of explosives he planted outside, gradually setting Saint on fire before his car blows, killing him, and the flames form the shape of a skull. Castle returns to his building and sits alone, drowning his pain in alcohol. He picks up his gun and prepares to go join his family, but he sees a vision of his wife and stops himself. He decides to leave the city for good and meets Joan outside, telling her he left something in his apartment for all of them. He has work he has to do, and tells her to read the obituary section to know what he does. Spacker soon gets released from the hospital, and the friends enter Castle's apartment, where they find 3 piles of cash. Go ahead and hit that like button. We then see Castle standing on a bridge, subscribe, planning to make his name known to all the criminals. And hey, don't click away just yet. YouTube thinks you'll love one of these 2 videos popping up right here, so check them out next.